I'm Sharon Keiki from Antioch Transit.
Michael Dowgelli, East County Transit, Paratransit user.
Tom Horaeus, Tri-Delta Transit.
Really?
Rita Xavier, the County Advisory Council on Aging.
Debbie Toth, Rehabilitation Services of Northern California.
Josh Sullivan, Contra Costa Developmental Disabilities Council.
Janet Bilbis, City of El Cerrito.
Peter Engel, CCTA staff.
Irene Ortega, CCTA staff.
I'm Ralph Hoffman, Senior Advocate with the Senior Mobility Action Council.
Marcel Delicato, Office of Emergency Services. Marcel Delicato. Sure. M-A-R-C-E-L-L-E.
Ty Boyle, Mobility Matters. Kurt Harris, Mobility Matters.
Now it is, right? Thank you. Okay, now we can move on to item number 3, which is public comment on items that are not on the agenda. I do have a speaker slip for that, and if anyone else from the public would like to speak on this item, then they should. Is there anyone else that wants to speak right now on items not on the agenda? Okay, and so we have Ralph Hoffman, and thank you for coming, and please speak.
Okay. Again, I'm Ralph Hoffman, a Senior Advocate with the Senior Mobility Action Council. And I, like many seniors or disabled people, are able to use both fixed route buses and BART, and also are eligible to use paratransit. We should encourage people to use the fixed route if they are eligible for both, simply because it saves them money and it saves the transit agency money. For example, County Connection, their fares are $4 each way. And you have to make reservations 1 or 2 days in advance, which is a little inconvenient. But the actual cost to County Connection is something like $28. So you save them money, and you also save yourself money because as a senior disabled person, you can get a card and ride for, or a Clipper card, whatever, and senior Clipper card, and ride for 75 cents. During commute hours, and on midday they have a program where you ride free from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Plus, we have in County Connection, which is about half of the county, we have 3 free bus routes now right here in Walnut Creek. County Connection just passed their 10-year plan, and in general, they have two improvements that they're planning in the next 10 years. One is to any routes that go parallel to or on 680, they're planning to increase the frequency of quite a bit to relieve the congestion on 680. And the other thing, which is even more important, I think, for senior and disabled people, is that they plan to increase the frequency of weekend routes, which the frequency is really low right now, and there are very few weekend routes comparatively to weekday routes. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And is there anyone else who wants to speak on an item that's not already on the agenda? Okay, since I don't see anybody, we'll move on. And the next item on the agenda is summary of actions from the January 25th meeting. And so wasn't a quorum, right? Is that? Oh, okay. So it's not. I mean, so it's minutes then. Yeah. Okay. So that's on page 7. And are there any corrections from anyone? Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, and is there a second? Okay, there's a motion by Michael, seconded by Sharon. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any noes?
I abstain because I wasn't.
Okay. And actually, I need to abstain too because I wasn't here. So actually, there are 2 abstentions, but the motion carries. Okay. And with that, we will move on to an update on the development of the Transportation Expenditure Plan, which is for information only.
Madam Chair, I'll kick this off. I asked Hisham to come to the meeting today. I don't know if you've met Hisham Noemi yet. He's our engineering director and engineering manager. Is that right? Okay. He's the head of all of our engineers, which we have a lot, by the way. But Hisham is I was going to say ankle deep, and then I was going to say knee deep, and then I was going to say waist deep, but he's probably neck deep in what's going on with the development of the Transportation Expenditure Plan. Hisham has been visiting all of the regional transportation planning committees, of which there's 4 in the county. He's been attending all of their TAC meetings as well as all of their committee meetings. Probably every week he's got 4 or 5 meetings that he's all over the county going to. So I wanted him to give you all an update as to where the RTPCs are in the comment and responses they are providing to the TEP. I think just today, and Hisham will correct me if I'm wrong, I think today or last week we released TEP 2.0, so it's kind of the second version, and that's out for comments by the RTPCs. But anyway, I'm probably not saying stuff that's correct that Hisham could correct me on, so I'll have Hisham correct me.
Thank you, Peter. I think you're correct in everything you said. So just I'll start with the big picture. As you know, the authority is considering putting a measure on the ballot in November 2016. They have not yet made that final decision. They'll make it sometime in July. And in terms of the schedule, we started this process over a year ago. And on February 1st, we started this process by asking the RTPCs to provide us their input on how they would spend their share of the $2.3 billion we expect to collect from a new half-cent sales tax measure that goes for 25 years from 2017 through 2042. And, each sub-region was their fair share or their funding target was based on a projection of 2030 population. And since that time, we've been meeting with the EPAC members, the expenditure plan advisory committee to come up with a recommendation for the authority. And just in late February, we issued version 1.0 that was of the draft tip that was emailed to the EPAC, and the intent of that mail out was to try to get the EPAC to come up to a consensus on a recommendation for the authority. Since that time, we've been also going to the 4 sub-regional committees, WICTAC, SWA, TransPAC, and Transplan, to get their input on the draft. And we received that input, and I'll go over the changes that they asked for in a minute in the handout in front of you. I want to say that the authority is on an accelerated schedule to get this done, so they're meeting at least twice a month, every first and third Wednesday. But last month in March, actually, they're meeting like every week. So there is a meeting scheduled on the 23rd at 6 p.m. And there is another meeting scheduled on March 29th. And on March 29th, that's when we believe the authority will adopt an official draft TEP. At that point, that will consider input from EPAC as well as the RTPCs. At that point, we will go back to the RTPCs and the EPAC and give them one final chance to provide their comments before it's finalized in May. So April is going to be, just like March, a very busy month for everybody. And there might be more than a couple authority meetings in April. So that's the big picture. I'm just going to dive into the table you have in front of you so you can see what changes were recommended by the sub-regions. The first column basically shows you the allocations that were in the draft TEP. If they were in black, that's from version 1.1, and the red are the changes that were requested by the RTPCs. And again, since we got the input from the RTPCs in August, there has been a lot of discussions between the city managers, the PMA group, as well as a group of EPAC members on various issues, including how much to go to as a return to source to the cities for local streets maintenance, as well as how much money to go to a new program called the Community Development Incentive Program, which is important to our environmental, social justice and other groups that sit on EPAC. And an agreement between these groups was reflected in this draft TEP, which called for a 23% minimum return to source to the cities and about 6% to go to this CDI program. The other agreement that we had is, BART executives, along with CCTA, Alameda CTC, and San Francisco County TA, as well as MTC, they also sat during that time to come up with a fair share distribution of how to fund 306 new BART cars at a cost of about $1.6 billion. And the agreement was if every county has to come up with, basically the 3 counties will have to come up with $300 million, and MTC and BART will come up with the remaining money, $300 million each, I believe. So that's reflected. So that's, because we're putting more money into BART, because we're creating a new program that wasn't there before, which is the CDI program, we had to take money from somewhere. So all the other programs basically had to be cut because this is basically a zero-sum game. We cannot exceed the $2.3 billion. So what we did as staff, we created this regional choice category to give the RTPCs basically another chance to augment funding to the programs that were cut. So in West County, they had, for example, $19.7 million. In East County, they had $16.7 million. In Central County, $30.2, and SWAT, $3.7. That's line 19 in the spreadsheet in front of you, row 19. So we asked them, how would you reprogram that money? Because you know more about your subregion than us. And in Central County, basically they distributed the $30 million they put $17 million into local streets and roads. They put $10 million for transportation for seniors and people with disabilities. And they left about $5.2 million into regional choice for future needs, which to give them flexibility for stuff that they cannot anticipate now. So that's what happened in Central. Paratransit, or Transit for Seniors with Disabilities, got an extra $10 million. In SWAT, I have a meeting in about half an hour, and they'll be talking about their shares again. But based on the initial meeting, they did not. The regional choice amount was too small to be distributed, so they left it alone. In West County, they respread that $19.7 million. Basically, they put $10 million into transportation for seniors and people with disabilities. They left $9.7 for future flexibility. And they also split one of the categories, the I-80, the transit and interchange improvements, the one in the strikeout font, number 5. They split it into two, where they split it into interchanges and high-capacity transit. And they moved some of the money there into additional bus operation money for West County. In East County, they basically split that 16.7. They left $5 million for future needs, and they split the rest. They put 7.7 into additional transportation for seniors and people with disability, $2 million for transportation for children, and $2 million for pedestrian, bicycle, and trail facilities. So that's what the RTPCs did. We basically summarized this to the board at their meeting on March 16th last week, and the board instructed us basically to accommodate the RTPC's input at this point in the next version of the TEP. They also discussed few things related to the descriptions. For example, I think they came to a consensus that we will call item number 11 as bus and other non-rail transit enhancement to give flexibility to each subregion. And related to BART, they asked us to add language that if the other counties do not come up with their share, that there is enough language here to that we can make this money available for other purposes. A couple of RTPCs asked us if the deal doesn't come through, that this money goes into the regional choice category to be redistributed by the RTPCs. And also they asked that at least $150 million for BART station access and parking improvements be funded either by BART or through this measure. So they're putting more conditions on BART. Under the major streets and complete streets category, they had some comments on the pilot concept.
Could you tell us which item number on the page you're talking about as you do it? It's hard to follow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So the BART one was item number 3. That's, you can see that there is, I'm sorry, item number 3, row number 3. You can see there's $300 million for the BART cars. That's what I was referring to. The next one is the major streets, which is item number 2. Thank you, Peter. That's where the current language in version 1.1 or version 2.0 actually had a pilot program, a description of a pilot program. There will be likely changes to that description based on input we got. And another comment that was made by the RTPCs is, as you can see now, the last line item under administration, under item number 20, there is commute alternatives. Currently, it has no funding proposed. So the RTPCs asked that the regional choice category description be broad enough to allow funding for commute alternatives if there is a need for it. And the board also discussed changing the name of item number 16, the Community Development Incentive Grant Program. I think it might be called Community Development Program. I don't think we came to a name yet, but that name could change a little bit. And finally, the regional choice, I think there was a request to change it to something like sub-regional transportation priorities as opposed to regional choice. So that's what we got out of as part of this item at the authority meeting last Wednesday. They also discussed the ULL line, and there will be a proposal related to that. They also talked about structure for the Citizen Advisory Committee. So these two items, you will see changes in future drafts. So I think the plan is version 2. We're now at version 2. That's in the packet for the authority, I think, on Wednesday. There will be, after the meeting, version 2.1, which will take into consideration any input provided by the authority at that time. So there will be at least one version before we issue the official draft TEP on March 29th.
I have a question on item number 11. I can't tell, I know about the discussion that went on, but I can't tell what this is saying, the way it's worded here. And
which one?
11?
Number 11. The bus and non-rail and other non-rail transit enhancements. The word other is not there, but that's used to be called non-rail transit enhancements because the board wanted flexibility in the future not to restrict this money to only buses because technology might change, there might be other kind of transportation. That was the idea. What we heard from West County is they really want this to be specifically for buses. So we had 3 sub-regions, wanted it to be flexible, and 1 sub-region, West County, who wanted it to be really specific to buses.
So what I'm not understanding is what's said here, actually. So it looks to me like it's saying that in West County is when I'm having problems with understanding what this is saying that I'm having trouble with. So it looks like what was added is the wording to make Category 11 bus and non-rail, and in West County having another category called bus, and having between the two of them 80.
Correct.
What are these, millions?
Right.
And so if this were to be what happened, then in fact in West County there could be anywhere between 30 million and 80 million for buses, but we don't know what's going to happen. It depends on things not known at this time, which is what is somebody going to do in the future about moving the money where in that category, right? Is that what that means?
That this is meant to show changes. When you see the new version of this, it'll be one line item under 11 that will show 80 million under West County. And West County can decide on their own whether they want to restrict it only for buses. That's up to West County.
Okay, so this wording says that?
the wording in the description will say that.
Okay.
Not on
It
this
doesn't
page.
now then, so don't worry about what it says.
Right. This
Okay.
is just to show the changes. That's
Okay, okay, that's fine. Does anyone else on the committee have a question?
Yeah, I have one question. On number 12 for your senior and people with disability amounts, what were we receiving prior to that category? Is it the same amount, additional, or less?
So in Measure J, right now, we have in the measure, which runs from 2009 through 2034, 5%. This is on top of what the program will get from Measure J. So that was a consideration. So if you add them up, that's 3.3% on top of what the program gets on Measure J. This is almost true. I mean, this is true for all the other categories that are in both Measure J and the new measure. It's on top.
In all subregions?
Sorry?
In all subregions?
The whole measure is on top of the existing Measure J. It's all additional.
No, what I mean is so the 3.3 is overall, but if you look at
yeah, the percentage varies from one subregion.
Right, and they're all, those are dollars, okay. So in one region it might be 1%, and in another region it would be another percent, and this the 3.3 is blended, right, between all the regions?
Correct.
Does that help you, Janet?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we were getting more than what.
Please.
So what we currently have in Measure J is funding that helps support paratransit only. So for all of the other transportation needs of the population, they aren't included in Measure J. And so when people talk about, well, we're already getting, I don't know what we're at right now, 3.5%, 3.9%, something like that. It goes to 5% over the life of the measure. And that's insufficient to cover the basic paratransit needs, let alone all the rest of the needs. And so I think it's important that this body understands that this is not about ensuring that we're getting more than we're currently getting. It's about meeting what the need is and being able to look at. I don't have the numbers for the projections for the population with disabilities. I do have the number of the projections for the aging population. I'll continue. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just interrupt real quick. Hisham has to go to the SWAP meeting, so he needs to get on the road.
Okay.
So, if a question that he needs to answer, if you have, I'll make sure and write it down and get an answer. Otherwise, I can probably answer a lot of them.
So maybe we can express our questions to him first, quickly, and then we'll come back to comments. How's that? I don't know what you're trying to do yet, so do what. He's going to leave.
It's not a question. Go.
Oh. Okay, so could you hold it off until Hisham is gone?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any questions? Okay, I think we're through the questions. So
thank you, and sorry, Debbie, to interrupt you.
Oh,
all right.
Okay, so please continue, Debbie.
So the point that I'm making has to do with I'm part of this expenditure plan advisory committee, as is Rita, and it was, I think, very confusing for a lot of folks when they first got involved in the process to understand that this is different than Measure J. Measure J exists. It exists on through until, 2034. It has an expenditure plan which designates how the money is to be spent, and that's not to be messed with. That's on a shelf, voted by the voters, done, and it's being implemented. What we're creating now is an additional half-cent sales tax, and that half-cent sales tax does not necessarily need to be related in any way, shape, or form to the existing Measure J, and I would even go so far as to say that it shouldn't be because Measure J is insufficient to meet the need, and so we have an opportunity to look at what the needs are of the population that we all serve, which is seniors and people with disabilities. And so this money, I think, should be a separate idea from what is currently being spent, because what is currently being spent covers some portion of paratransit, which is one aspect of the need. So we need to look at mobility management. We need to look at the growth in the aging population. I was just starting to say, just to give you guys a tiny little sliver, from 2010 to 2060, the population that is the largest, fastest growing population is 85 and older, and it's going to grow in that time period by 299%. It's a big number. For the two less age brackets, 75 to 84 and 65 to 74, you're looking at 195% and 125%. Those are the largest segments growing of the population. The Department of Finance estimates people with disabilities to be about 10% of the population. If you think about those numbers, you'll recognize that we're coming nowhere near meeting what the need is. And so I think that the questions we need to be asking is there a sufficient amount of money to meet the need that's not being met and what's projected for going forward? So I just wanted to give that sort of perspective.
Yes, Jeff?
Call me whatever you want.
I'm sorry, did I do that wrong? Oh, Josh,
I will be Jeff for the rest of the day.
You will be Josh. I actually had it written down wrong, too.
So this is, I think it's kind of coupled with Debbie's question. Just as a point of curiosity, how closely does the current iteration of the TEP reflect the data gathered through the stakeholder engagement process that was conducted earlier this year / late last year?
That's a good question. I mean, the stakeholder, the gathering information continues. There was a very stronger than ever before amount of input from people requesting additional senior transportation and transportation for seniors and disabled populations. When you say how much does it reflect it, do you mean how much does it reflect it, the program being here, or how much does it reflect it with the amount of money that it's proposed to go into it?
More categorically, yeah. So
I would say that the initial amount of money going into it probably isn't as high as some of us would have liked to have seen. There is still strong advocacy through the EPAC. I think, Debbie and Rita are on the EPAC, and at the last EPAC meeting, I think all of the members had a chance to say, okay, what would you fund less, what would you fund more? I would say the majority of them said after Debbie's, used all those statistics she just gave you, she also did that to the EPAC, and I would say most of the members said we would like to see more money in transportation for seniors and disabled populations.
I'll just say it was the top number one thing that we were all given the opportunity to pick the 5 things we thought should be funded more than what were in the draft expenditure plan. And the number one thing agreed on by everybody that needed more funding was senior and disabled transportation.
So, there's a difference between hearing it and saying it and it actually happening. So, I mean, I would encourage you, if you can, to go to the next EPAC meeting because everybody's asking for more. And it's got to come from somewhere because the pie doesn't get bigger. It's just the pieces change. So, was there a lot of, public information, public requests? Yes. Is it a strong, everybody wants it? The question is, how much?
Go ahead, Debbie.
I'm actually going to ask a question and not comment this time.
Hope it wasn't of Asham.
No. It's actually, so the RTPCs their feedback is requested and they're giving it. EPAC is convened to provide feedback. What role might PCC have in terms of advising the process?
I can answer what I think is the right answer.
Well, there has been no formal, none of the advisory committees at this point have formally had a process to advise on the TEP. So right now, I think it's going through the EPAC and it's going through the RTPCs.
But
so those of you that, independent of your role on the PCC, are also advocates, it doesn't hurt to, have that discussion with the RTPCs or the EPAC, because they're the ones, and the EPAC is a public meeting, public comments. So I guess that's, to date there is no formal, but that's not to say there couldn't be. And Janet probably can provide it.
Well, I was going to just go back to what our role is, period. And our role has to do with the board, I believe, not any of those. Those other groups are, we don't advise the regional committees, and we don't advise, the EPAC is just a temporary committee, and we're permanent, so to speak. And we advise the board, so I think we advise. So to me, that's the, given that it hasn't been specified in the process what it is, I think it would become what our normal process is, which would mean the answer would be the board, the authority board.
Right. So then might I ask if we might, as a body, come up with a recommendation for the board in relation to this line item that pertains to that area which we advise the board on?
If we do that, we have to then say what we're going to cut, because the total already is 100%. So that's the dilemma that everybody's facing, actually.
I don't think we do as PCC. I think as EPAC we're charged with that, but not as the Paratransit.
We're not getting any. What I'll say as a member of several of those bodies is we can't get anywhere if we can't give much as we might like to give everyone everything they want. We have to equal 100%, right? Okay, so we always have to say, I want to do this rather than that. We can't ever just add and add and add and add, much as we might like to do it. So that would be helpful to do that. For example, I'm not going to name anything because it would be an arbitrary thing, but that would be helpful. That would actually be helpful to do that, much as it's painful. It's painful to everybody, actually, to not be able to give everybody what they want, but that would be helpful. But I actually think we advise the board. So I think we advise, and actually they're the ones that make the decision. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
This is just a simple question for Pete, if I may ask through the chair. The numerical usage of a decimal, the amount of, it says millions in the columns, but it says 2339.1, for example. In real dollars, what is that? I was an English teacher, not a math teacher, and that's puzzling me, if I may ask this question.
$2,339,000,000.
Oh, so it's $2 billion. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
I wanted to just respond to what you said.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can I go back to finish that? So that $2,339,000,000 is in today's dollars. So as throughout the 25 years, that will grow with inflation. So ultimately, the inflated dollars at the end of 47 would be in the 3 point something or $4 billion, in actual inflated dollars, what we call expenditure year. And so, and really for the programs like bus and paratransit, it's the expenditure year, it's the inflated dollars that matter, right? For the projects, the big capital projects, they have to take it back to current dollars and figure out, what the projects are going to cost, when they're going to cost at the year of expenditure. Whereas programs we fund every year. So it's actually just a an estimate of the projected revenues for that year, which is always going to be, inflated from this number. Tom, does that make sense, Mr. Finance Person who's...
Okay. Let's do let other people speak, though, but go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I would totally respectfully agree that, one, we have to have 100% at the end of the day. There's no doubt about that. The pie is finite. However, I don't think that this board has the expertise to advertise or to assume we would know where we would cut or add in other areas. I think that's why the EPAC brings together all these disparate spaces to come up with that. I think that the board has to decide what they're going to decide, but I think we as a body, because we advise the board on issues relating to seniors and people with disabilities, that it would be incumbent upon us to express to the board our desire to see additional funding for this, given the demographics and what we see as needs that aren't being met currently. We're not saying this is how much you have to give us, this is how much you should take away from everybody else. We're saying it needs to be significantly more than what's here for these reasons, and that's it. I don't think we need to say here's where you would cut elsewhere, because that's not our area of expertise on this body. That's just my 2 cents.
Does anybody else have a comment on anything, or even on anything? Because or if not, I mean, we'll move on if not. But is that a hand? No, guess not. Okay. Yes.
So if
Josh.
we are going, totally works. So if we are going to advise the greater board, is that done through a letter from this group, or how does that happen? Do we ask Peter to champion it for us? How do we show up?
Well, I'm just staff, so I can't champion it, but if you direct a letter, the problem is it's an information item, so I don't know that we can take action to do that. We can do it for the May agenda, but that might be, pushing the lateness of the schedule. So that's the predicament.
And when is the next EPAC meeting? I think it's you were encouraging us to come. First week.
23rd of March. I'll say 23rd of March right now, but I'll get back to you with it.
No, don't say that. It's the first week in April, I think.
Oh, that's this Wednesday. I was listening to Irene, to Iris.
It's a CCTA.
Let me see if it's on my calendar real quick. Or can you look it up on the webpage? It's there. We'll find out. By the end of the meeting, we'll find out for you and let you know.
So in the absence of that ability, because procedural-wise, in order for us to take a position on something that's an information as opposed to action item on our agenda. So is there the capacity, and in my, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, however long I've been on the PCC, I don't think we've ever run across this where the question is it possible to notice and convene an additional meeting via telephone, or do we have, I don't remember what our bylaws say on it, but what can we do in the absence of time, because our next meeting is too late for this?
I might suggest that the telephone thing would be, I don't even know if it's allowed, but it would be mechanically very difficult to set up, because every site would have to be accessible by law. But it would seem to me, why couldn't we have a special meeting?
I think also, and I'm not an expert on the Brown Act and Robert's rules and all that stuff, but I think with a supermajority, 75% of you, if you voted that it was an emergency because of the timing, you could change this to an action item and actually take action on it.
And the reason is, if I might try to put words in your mouth. This came up that it would be where the decision you think is being made on the 29th of this month. Did I hear you say that? Or maybe it was Hisham.
On
sure.
the 29th of this month, which is next week, the board will be will likely take action. The schedule for them is to take action to send this out to the RTPCs and the cities and the EPAC for any final comment.
Okay, that didn't help.
And so that would want that. That's the point that you would want actually a fairly firm, dollar amount in there for them to, get a better feel for that.
Just the dollar amount, or the topic of what, or the wording? There's the dollar amount, but then there's the.
Well, what I heard the discussion was the dollar amount. You want to see more money in there.
Is that true? Okay. Okay. And then there's another topic called the description of things. I'm calling it that anyway. And that can go on for a long, even into the summer, right? Did with Measure J.
Theoretically,
the plan,
could.
The plan, the thing called the plan, is developed.
Right. There will be wordsmithing of the descriptions of each of the topic items.
So this is about dollars, not description.
Yeah,
because there's time for the description.
Yes.
But that's also saying that the description ought to be on the next agenda of this committee, right?
If you're asking for it, we could do that.
Are you asking for it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, but for the purposes of the amount of money, we could have a special meeting, right?
We could, or I think you could take action, like I was saying.
Oh, under that way, that's right.
You
so
could,
we could do
you
that
could change the agenda
today.
with, with
so,
3/4 or.
So that would take first a motion from a member of this committee.
So, Madam Chair, can I make a motion?
Josh?
Josh works.
Did I do that wrong? No, Josh is right, right?
Josh is right.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we convert the information item listed on the agenda today into an action item to reflect the urgency that this board feels.
Item number, we can't, we actually would have a new item.
Oh, you can't convert? Then I would like to motion that we add in a new item to address action on the transportation expenditure plan.
For what topic? Okay, that's enough. Okay, so now we need a second to that motion.
I second.
Okay, there's a second. So there was a motion by Josh and a second by Debbie to add an item to this agenda. And the topic of that item is the dollar amounts on the items on the expenditure plan. Do I have that correct? Okay. So now we can discuss, first of all, so what we're discussing right now is whether or not we should add an item to the agenda. We're not discussing the topic yet because we have to do a separate process that we'll do immediately after we do this one, which is, I call this housekeeping. I know how to, this I actually know exactly how to do. Okay, so does anybody want to have anything to say about it, or does somebody want to call the question? Which means we'll just vote. Nobody wants to? Okay, there you call the question. Okay, and let's see. So then we move on to the voting on. Okay, so we're happy to do that. So we'll now vote on that item, and we will vote. Irene, can you call the roll, please?
Sorry. Debbie Toth?
Yes.
Janet Abelson?
Yes.
Janet Bilbus?
Yes.
Joshua Sullivan?
Yes.
Michael Dalgelli?
Yes.
Rita Xavier. Sharon Keiki.
Yes.
Tom Horace.
Yes.
Okay, so the vote was unanimous, and yes, so we will add an item. And we didn't say where we would add an item, but we could add it, let's see, look at my agenda here.
The rest of the items on the agenda are kind of the perfunctory ones,
yeah.
so
So
we
we
might
could
as well
just
do
add
now.
it after the end of number 5, which is the current item. So it'll be 5.5, say. Okay, so now we need, so we've voted, and we're done with deciding that we want to put the item on the agenda. So now we have to finish 5, and then we can go on to this item. Does that make sense? Okay, so is there any more discussion on item number 5 on the current agenda? Seeing none, we'll go on to the new item. And is there any comments on this item? Motion?
I think we should write a letter, if that's a comment on the item.
Make a motion.
I would motion that as the Paratransit Coordinating Council, we do an outreach letter to the Board of Directors for CCTA that would address meeting the current, ongoing, and increasing needs of our target population, the population we're charged here to help represent.
For money.
Sure.
You said money. Okay, that's what this is about. Okay, money. Okay. Okay. Is there a...
Madam Chair, before we...
Who's talking?
Me.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah. Before we move on with that, I have to ask, the goal I heard discussed was to come up with a number, a needs number. If we write a letter, how are we coming up with a needs number?
So can I clarify that I wasn't saying that we need to come up with an exact number, but that we need to come up with an increase to meet the needs?
Can't we do that with a motion?
In the letter?
No, we don't have to write. We don't normally do things like that via letters. We would make a motion, and the result of the motion would go. That's normally how that's done. So you could say, for example, I want to make a motion that we need 20 million, whatever the number is, 20 million more in this category because da-da-da, whatever you want to say. Okay. And that's the motion. And assuming it passes, and that goes to the authority? Is that who we're sending this letter to? Okay, yeah. And that would be how that would work, right? Yes. Okay.
Josh could also amend his motion.
I would amend my motion here. I'm getting emotional about amending my motion. No. So my question, I guess I would ask Tom, from your input, does it need to be a very specific number, or could it be just around maybe we would include prevalence rates, an increase in diversity and scope of service needed to meet the needs of our communities? And Debbie has data on the senior side, and I was just sharing with her some of the data we have on disabilities and prevalence rates.
That could work, because I didn't see us coming up with a number here today, and that's why I expressed that.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. I would say that my ask at the beginning of this was to get something from this body saying there needs to be more. So it's not just coming from the EPAC. It's not just coming from the RTPCs. It's coming from this body as well to say, given what we know about the growth projections of the senior population, as well as, and we could include numbers in that if it's this body's will, given these growth projections, we need to see a significant increase in the amount of funding directed in this line item.
So is that the motion?
That's the question of the group, is that...
But you can make that the motion, and then we vote on it, and then we know that.
Okay, that's the motion.
I need a clarification.
Okay.
Are we talking about the original figure or the figure with the added
I think we're
parts by
talking
the
about
three
the,
RTPCs?
I think we're talking about with the red numbers in there.
So added it on to that.
Right, but here, her motion didn't talk about the exact number. It just said we need more.
I'm just
And that's
asking what the
okay.
thinking
I mean,
is.
she can, it's okay to do that. And she did make the motion. And did you get it down, Irene? Can you repeat it, please?
So I'll clarify my motion
Okay.
since I'm making it again. As related to item 12, line item 12, there needs to be additional funding to support the growth projections in the senior and disabled population in Contra Costa County. And Josh said it much more beautifully than I did, so you can rewind the tape and listen to what he said in terms of meeting the growing needs based on diversification, disability, age, et cetera. But I specifically want to point out that I'm talking about the overall amount of funding for this line item. We are not advising the RTPCs, right? We're advising the Transportation Authority Board. So it's about the overall expenditure line item.
I think it would be okay, though, to request your letter is to the authority board, but request that they
CC.
That they encourage the RTPCs to look at sub-regional funding to do the same thing.
Okay. What he said.
So let's see, who's, I don't care what the answer is here, but whose motion is this?
I'll take it since it was my original, but I will amend it to include the content that Debbie has provided.
Okay, and are you the seconder, Debbie? Yes, I am. Okay. And did you get it, Irene?
Yes. And
okay.
Just to clarify, I'm assuming the chair would sign this letter?
I actually thought it was a motion, not
Well, a motion for a letter.
a motion. It's a motion.
So we need to, somebody needs to sign the
Okay.
letter. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
it would be the chair.
Yeah, I actually thought it was a motion, and the board gets it, and we could request that. And I guess we can do whatever, but we want usually the way it would go to the board would be a motion, right?
I think the motion was to write a letter, Janet. And
Okay.
that's the way I took it. And yes,
So we're not
you should sign it
making-
as our
we
chair.
aren't. I mean, we can. The thing about a letter is it takes time to write the letter, right? And a motion is like here now. It's done.
Madam Chair, I think we have a question.
Wait, I'm
Maybe-
sorry. Go ahead.
Just a point of order, I think that actually we might be able to solve this. I think what Janet's trying to say is that this board can recommend directly, so that you could just carry this to the board, that this matter be, rather than formalizing it in a letter, it could just be made a motion, voted on, and that it'll be reported to the CCTA, that board, that this is what we wish. Just a suggestion that you could amend your motion just to say that.
I think the process for the TEP at this point would be to accept comments. No, you're right. I think it's okay. I mean, I can pass on to staff that's working on the TEP to include your action today to request additional funds. We don't need to write a formal letter.
And what you could say is that the EPAC, and the RTPs, because why do you want to leave? You don't want to leave anyone out, right? And the board, that the information in it go to all those bodies, right? But technically, we report to the board, so we're like on an even keel with them. They left us out, but we have a default way we report, right? And it's only to the board. But that's good.
I understand the request of what you're trying to do. Maybe I just need to think through the best way to present it to the authority. And I think what Michael said is probably correct. I mean, right now because Hisham's going to go to SWAT, and SWAT's not going to write. If the process says SWAT's writing a formal letter, then we will also write a formal letter. If the process is SWAT takes action, here's the changes we want, and what staff does at that point is here's SWAT's requested changes, and then it comes to the authority. As Janet knows, she was here at the meeting last week. You know, those suggested changes are presented, and the board kind of says, "Oh, yeah, okay, we'll keep it in there for now," or "No," or "Yes," or those are considered at that point. So, however we get the comments of the Paratransit Coordinating Council to the board, I will have to learn from Hisham and Ross on how he wants that information. If it's writing a letter, I can write a letter. If it's just the comments based on today's discussion, then we can do that too.
So, Madam Chair, maybe I would reconstruct all the stuff I said before, and then for the action poor Irene, and then for the specific action, have it mirror the methodology that SWAT chooses to use. Is that?
But we want to do more than that, don't we? We want to go to all of them, and I don't think anyone else does that, do they? And we certainly have we want all of the different groups expressing their, that I listed, the EPAC, the regional subcommittees. That's it, I think, right?
The board.
And the board, yeah. To get this information, right? We don't want to leave it out to any one of those groups. So we just simply send it there. And if it's done via a motion, they will get a memo that says this is the motion from the PCC, the official paratransit body of this organization and of this county.
We're going to send your discussion today, or your motion, whatever you vote on, to the authority board, with also the request that the authority board direct it to the RTPCs. We're not going to send it directly to the authority board and the RTPCs. So we have to get direction from the board, because the board may choose not to do that. I mean, we're advisory to the authority board. So you are all certainly welcome to go to your RTPCs and, make a motion or comment with them directly. But I think our action here is just directed at the authority and requesting the authority to take this under consideration, as well as, have the discussion with it's kind of different, because the RTPCs look at all of these programs for just their one section of funds, where we're looking at just one program, but, for all the RTPCs, not just one. So it's kind of just the opposite of what they're doing.
So the problem with what you're saying is that the board is not in the habit of doing what you just said, and it would take time for that to happen, because for the board to do that, it would have to be on the board's agenda at some meeting, right?
It would just be included in the TEP item that's going to the board.
For it to go to our request that it would go to the other groups?
Yeah, I guess technically I'll throw another curve into it. Technically, we're not advising this to the authority board. We're advising it to the special TEP board, because there's a special.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think we could do either one, since they left us out of the process.
Yeah.
More or less, right?
Well, they left all the advisory. They left all the advisory committees out of the process. Ped and Bike committee is not, to my knowledge, making any direct comments to the board, although they might, I'm not sure.
So what I think could certainly happen, regardless of anything else, is that some individual here could take it to the other groups, and we just send it to the board, right? That certainly gets it there, doesn't it? It does on everything else I get. So why don't we rewind and restate? Why don't you restate your motion, however? You don't have to put the detail in, but just the framework, maybe?
Sure. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that as the PCC, we engage in outreach to the board through whatever methodology is the most appropriate at the time, that urges the board to take into consideration the increases in population, growth in diversity within the groups that we represent here, and need for services that basically, as the TEP is developed, I'm getting side-railed here, as the TEP develops, that the number that's ultimately decided reflects the actual need of the community today and moving into the future.
And you want to, in our understanding of that, those numbers, is that it is, and you would provide the numbers for the disabled community, and Debbie would provide the numbers for the senior community?
Correct.
Okay. And that is your motion?
Yes.
And is that okay with you, Debbie? Okay. And is there any further discussion on this motion? Yes?
My only question would be, which board is the, you said something about it, it wasn't the CCTA board, but the TEP board? Okay, thank you.
Which is the board acting in a different way. Okay, so I think we're ready to vote. Okay, and I've the maker of the motion is Josh, and the seconder is Debbie. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We did it, folks. So that takes care of the number part of it. And then we have an extended period of time to talk about the content part of it, I remember from Measure J. And so our next meeting is in May, right? So that should be adequate for that process. Is that true?
To be honest, I don't know. I think it should be, but I don't know that for a fact. It just depends on how quickly things happen. From what I heard from Hisham is the board won't take official action adopting the plan until July. So
that's
it
what
sounds
it was
like,
last time.
Yeah, there will be time based in May to do that.
It has to do with the deadlines for turning
Right,
in measures
right.
and all that, which is in August, early August, I think. But it has to get through a lengthy process of going and being approved by a certain number of cities and by the county itself, and that takes time. And but that couldn't possibly. I can't believe that would happen before May. But so if it turns out that May is not adequate timing for that, then it seems to me, shouldn't we be able to have a special meeting between now and then? Okay, so I think that's what we would like to do. Am I right, group? That we would have a special meeting for purposes of discussing the descriptive part of it, of which there is a whole section.
Correct.
Because that's called the plan.
Yeah, well, what we can do is just, we'll just schedule a meeting right now. I mean, you all can direct me to schedule a meeting for.
Okay, you're so directed.
The same, what are we, the third Monday in April?
Okay, or let's see what that looks like.
And we can always cancel it if we don't need it. We can just cancel it.
What's that date? Does anybody have it? 20th?
No, Monday, 18th. Monday, 18th.
I'm sorry, April 18th. Okay. Does that work for people? Okay. So we will have it on our calendars, and then we may not have it, and it'll be at 2 o'clock, of course. Mm-hmm. And if you want to look for a pattern of what it would look like, you can look at the expenditure plan for Measure J, and you'll see a section.
Maybe you could direct Peter to send that to us.
Yeah, that would be nice. Okay. Great idea.
Or
Irene would be even. Sorry, Peter, you've lost. Irene wins. And I think that can be done by email, right? For everybody?
I will send you the language for Measure J, and I will send you the most recent TEP 2.0 draft preliminary, so you can just see what it says.
Okay, and we would use that information for discussion and plus anything else that comes up after today for this special meeting that we would have. And at that meeting, it's a special meeting, so we can't talk about any other topics because that's the definition of a special meeting, right? So it'll be just this item. So I think we're done with that unless somebody sees a way that we're not finished with that topic. We're okay? Okay. So we'll move now on to item number 6, which is the Service Review Advisory Committee report. And we met, and at the last meeting we discussed the draft emergency preparedness brochure being prepared by the vendor working on the draft, on the emergency preparedness plan. And it's a really extensive process. It's, and some you might even say exhaustive. I was about to. Process that's being developed for how paratransit vans would be used and how people with disabilities would get around during a major emergency. And so that's that. But I think what's more interesting, perhaps, is the fact that the East Bay Paratransit has moved, and they moved into facilities that are much more accessible to people and usable, and you might say safe. The reason I say safe, and it's what they say, is that the vans have been unloading on Broadway, and it's really unsafe to do that because there's no real place to do that. And with this new building, they actually have a separate off-street parking area, and people can come in and it's just for this one agency, which is the East Bay Paratransit, and they can park there and people can get out without having to worry about traffic. So it's really safer for people and makes it a lot more usable. The other thing that's happened for the first time ever, maybe even, is that there's actually a meeting room that really works for people with disabilities, and it is like a boardroom. It has a rectangular-shaped table that's big, but wheelchairs, for example, can get around behind the people who are sitting at that table, and that's a first. Believe it or not, for that to be able to happen. And they're still ironing out some of the details of the equipment, but it's a lot like this somewhat in that they have TVs. I guess the TV here is just in front of Irene and Peter. So if you're sitting up here, you can see it. There, it's on the walls, and they have, I think, 3 of them. So if there's something being presented, you can display it on all 3 screens at the same time. So then, depending on what angle you're looking at, you can look at one screen or another. So people are really happy with this change because And so what's happened is not only is the SRAC, which is what I'm talking about, meeting there, but also the AC Transit Accessibility Committee and also the BART Committee. If you'll remember, those two agencies make up the SRAC. So it's kind of different aspects of the same thing. And there may well be some other groups meeting there, but I don't know who they are. And they see that site as being flexible for disabled groups to meet there because they really don't have a place other than that. And they were having to move out of the MTC building because they're moving to San Francisco. And so anyway, so that's really helpful. And with that, I'll close my comments unless somebody has a question or something about it. I don't see any, so we'll move on to the Bay Area Partnership Accessibility Committee. Who's that?
It's usually either Kim or Mallory or Richmond, and none of them are here, so we'll just skip that item.
Okay. And then we'll move on to item number 8, which is the Senior Mobility Action Council report. Who's doing that? That's Rita.
I didn't know I was going to be doing that.
Okay, can you do that?
Trying to think what we last did, maybe with some help from
We
Debbie
do have
and
a
Ty.
comment from the public. Can the public enlighten us? Shall we start with that?
Okay.
Well, again,
And it's Ralph
Hoffman, and I am a senior advocate with the Senior Mobility Action Council. And actually, my comment is on the reverse side, Janet. So if you could read the comment, and I will do the.
I actually can't because I'm not part of the group and I am not all that familiar with the group.
Oh, well, I don't have the comment that I made, so I can't remember it.
Oh.
Is it on there?
No. Can Ty make a report? Okay, Ty. You want to sit down, Ralph, and we'll have you come up after Ty makes his report? Okay. Oh, I didn't know it was on the back. I'm sorry. Okay, why don't we let Ty start it, and then we'll call Ralph up again. Thank you.
Thanks. I think the thing that came up at the last meeting that was most significant to this group is there is a desire from SMAC to talk about paratransit crossing boundaries, talking about people that may want to come from East County to West County. It's an all-day event now, and so there's desire to look into it. We're not sure where we're going to go with it. We're not even sure what the real need is. It could be that it's smaller than what we think, but there was a lot of passionate discussion about it. Shirley Crone came and said that this is something that we need to do for elders and people with disabilities in our county. That was the large item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then why don't we call Ralph back up?
Well, I'll lead and model both.
Okay.
My advocacy for this year, 2016, is pedestrian safety for seniors and for the disabled. And this involves 2 programs. One is improving in each municipality or in the unincorporated county, improving crosswalk safety, especially at unguarded intersections with crosswalks. And that's where there is no stop sign or anything, but there is a crosswalk marked. An excellent example of this improvement was done on Railroad Avenue in Danville, where they have implanted lights in the crosswalks that automatically come out come on when one crosses. There's no button to push, and also there's a flashing light in either direction to alert drivers. The problem, by the way, and statistically, there has been an increase of some 10% between 2014 and 2015 in the number of pedestrian fatalities in the U.S. It's nationwide, and apparently one of the main causes is distracted driving. In other words, drivers using iPhones or whatever when they shouldn't, but it's very difficult for police to enforce this, that they should not. And the second thing I would encourage really all pedestrians to do, and that's what I'm modeling here today, is to wear bright clothing, like this jacket. There used to be a saying, at least, to wear white after dark. But if we all wear white, there's a white shirt over there, it can be much easier seen than just brown or gray or whatever. And to look the approaching driver directly in the eye as you cross the crosswalk, and to avoid jaywalking, of course, except on residential streets where it is permitted. And this is especially true, of course, for the seniors and disabled. We walk slower. I have these commuters that just walk right past me, and during rush hour, they rush. And I try rushing too. I can't keep up with them. They don't see it. We don't see as well. We don't hear as well. So we especially are the victims in pedestrian safety. And you notice I have a bright glove on that I can wear. And there's all kinds of lights here that I can light up and wear as well. And this happens to be from, I don't know if you still make these, from 2CTA. Yeah, that's lit, I think. Okay, there. So this is my modeling of how to cross the street. Thank you.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Rita and then Michael.
I do have one thing to add to what Ty was saying. Another part of the discussion at the last SMAC meeting was not only the getting from one part of county to the other, but getting from this county to other counties for things like specialists and such. The problem of going to Alameda County or San Francisco to UCSF or something like, to medical center. So that was also a large discussion.
How about getting to this meeting?
Well, yeah, that too.
You have to go through 2 counties to do it. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
You do not know how long I have been waiting to tell this tale, sir. I want to thank you for your remarks about being visible and about pedestrian safety. A few months ago, I went to visit my parents in Chico. I believe I may have told you about how I got up there using Paratransit. Well, while I was there, I took the regular fixed route bus to a community in the mountains called Paradise. And I went and I stopped for about an hour, walked around, did some shopping, had something to eat. Inside the restaurant that I ate at were 2 deputy sheriffs who were dining. Okay, didn't think anything of it, went out. As I was crossing the street with one of those things that you were talking about where you press the button and then the thing lights up, as I walked out, this person in a truck, a big truck with huge wheels, didn't want to give me the space, came to a careening halt. So I'm sitting there like I backed off, even though I had the right of way. You know the old saying, you can be right, dead right? When I pulled back, the driver stopped, got out of the vehicle, and started walking towards me, obviously after my you-know-what. Little did I know that behind me, the 2 deputy sheriffs were coming out of the restaurant and promptly arrested the individual. Thank you for your talk about pedestrian safety.
Tom?
Yes. I, too, will. It's anecdotal, but I will support Mr. Hoffman's presentation. We're just coming out of winter, and I lived in Antioch for many, many years, and I still work there. And when I leave at night, one of the changes that happened in Antioch involved young people that I noticed. And young people regularly walk right out in the middle of the street, dark clothes, hoodie up. And when you're driving and it's right at dusk or at dark, it is so hard to see anything. And then something will flash suddenly. Something will turn, and you go, oh, there's a person. And they just don't get it. You want to get out and slap them and say, do you realize you have a black sweatshirt on, you have the hood pulled up, you got black jeans on? I didn't see anything until you turned and looked at me. I mean, and they're almost impervious to it. And it's not that you as a driver are being inattentive or you or even negligent, but pedestrians contribute when because I go out and walk too, and I ride a bicycle, and you really have to be aware of that.
Anybody else? I'll add a comment. I've heard that comment said about clothing many times. It's not so easy, though, to do it. I am always cold. Maybe it's because I'm from Arizona, but anyway, I'm always cold. So the clothing that I will be wearing is my coat, right? It's very hard to find a coat that is not dark. And not only that, you have to find it in the right size, right? So, and in my case, on sale. But so it's very hard to find such a thing. And so I totally believe what you say about that the group of people you were talking, the kids, because I've seen it too. But it's also very hard to find clothing that actually fits the bill. And so anything anybody could do about having clothing made that's in colors other than black, it would be very helpful. And
But Janet, I would add $50 says you would not cross a divided Ford lane in the middle of the street somewhere where there isn't even street lights. You would do it at the light where you will be visible even in
and
life jacket.
I wear a reflective wheelchair. I guess you could say it's the same color as Ralph's attire that he's using for the demo here. And I've been hit 3 times by cars. Anyway, been there, done that too many times. And it really does hurt, and it really does knock you out, and so forth. So anything we can do. However, I'd never get, again, if I had a choice, anything other than a really bright wheelchair. And mostly those are also dark, if you think about it, the ones that you see in the store, unless you're buying an expensive one. And then you can get one that's a color. But a lot of those colors are really dark, too. Or blend in, like I've seen a lot of dark forest green chairs. Those, like, blend right in. So it's people need to be really careful, and so I think that these suggestions that we got are really great, and thank you for sharing them, all of you that did, because any life we can save is, a life we want to save, with that, we'll move on, which I think we're just about done. The future agenda items. So you can see the list of items that are here. I won't repeat them, except I'm going to talk about D, I think, new member applications. We have 2, right?
That's correct.
So we need to have a committee.
Yeah.
Do we already have a committee?
Yeah, we do. It's you and Kim Ridgway and Michael.
Okay, so we'll meet half an hour early next time?
Let's make it...
Or some other time?
No, can we make it...
How about that date we said we would, the special meeting? Meet half an hour before that?
We could do that, but then we wouldn't take action on the new members until this May meeting.
That's true, but at least we would know that it would happen.
Yeah.
Or unless you want to do it right before... I mean, that way we could take action.
We will schedule it for the April meeting at 1:30. And if the April meeting doesn't happen, we'll just do it at the May meeting at 1:30.
Okay. And will they be able to become members at that meeting?
At the May meeting, yes.
Anyway, should we just do it at that one then?
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be May.
Okay.
Okay. But that'll help with two. There are two applications, as I understand it. That'll help with two, but we still have a lot of vacancies. This is one person from East County.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, who's here, is East County.
And then what's the other one?
And Ralph Hoffman is Central County.
Central County, okay.
And we have both of their applications.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of
So
doing the...
that leaves 2 slots unfilled in Central County, and that leaves 2 slots unfilled in West County. So we need to get those slots filled, and they have to be done in a certain way, which is you can have either 2 disabled and 1 senior, or 2 seniors and 1 disabled. They can't all be either one of those. So that we need to have both represented ultimately is the rule on the consumer slot. These are consumer slots I'm talking about. Okay, and how about the other slots? Are we okay there? Okay. So if anyone has any ideas, I think there's isn't there a membership application or about the committee or something back there? I thought I saw something. Maybe not.
I don't.
No?
I don't think so. It's on our webpage, and if people just contact either me or Irene, we can communicate with them and send them in the right direction for getting the application filled out.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that or any of these other agenda items other than, I mean, we can't discuss them, but we could ask a question, I guess. Okay, I don't see any. Is there any news to share? Yes.
It's just a comment, and I'm not sure that it is necessary at this meeting, but I've had a chance to use the bus bridge that goes from the Pittsburgh Bay Point BART station, partially handled by Paratransit fixed route buses. And I've done it twice in getting over to San Francisco, and although it would affect people who use wheelchairs, because I think they're providing some sort of a paratransit service, which I didn't see, but I'm presuming that it's there. I mean, Tom might be able to, but I just really want to thank everybody for, working on that, the companies that are assisting BART and BART itself, because I understand it's a very, very serious problem that could impact transportation out of East County in the future for some time. Whatever the problem is, they apparently have not found the cause of it yet, and the bus bridge will be in effect until they are able to get it back up and running.
Do you want to add something?
Yes, Michael. Our dispatch has the foresight such that when they set up scheduled paratransit rides during this bus bridge, they send them directly to North Concord BART. That's why I didn't see it. That way they don't have to do any bridge in between. They just go straight over the hill.
Okay. Anything from anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, I just add, and this is somewhat related to the item C on the one above the Measure J Program 15 claims. So for the 2 operators that are here, I do have the new number for 16-17. I haven't had a chance to break it out by operator and everything yet, but we're projecting about a 3% increase in revenues for 16-17.
So do we need to form a committee to review?
We did that already.
We did that already?
The last meeting, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Were you here then, Rita? Okay. Were you wanting to be on that committee? To review the claims?
Well, I don't know if he does.
Oh, what?
I don't think she was.
Oh, no, I'm asking her if she wants to be, because she was talking about not being familiar with her own city's claim.
It's an incredible learning process.
Right now we have Sharon, Michael, Josh, and Vicky.
Okay, that you'd be a different perspective though. Are you interested?
When you meet.
I don't know. Am I on? Am I on it? Or am I? No. Okay. This is the one where you review those claims.
Yeah.
It was in the calendar. Let me look. See if I can find the.
Does anybody know when it is?
Madam Chair, I believe the dates are still up in the air.
Oh.
For this meeting,
Well,
we had discussed sending out an email to figure out the dates that work.
So they'll be, we haven't selected the final date, but they'll be between April 27th and May 3rd. So we could try and figure that out today if you wanted. Well, we'll send it, we'll have Irene send out an email and see which, a doodle poll and see which of those works best. It's pretty much an all-day thing.
Just like a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
Rita's interested in being on it.
Okay, and do you want to do it? You usually do it, Janet. Do you want to do it again?
I
or do you want
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really, really a good experience for people. You learn about all the different transit agencies that way, in a way that we never get an opportunity to do otherwise. So, okay, so with that, no news to share. So the next meeting is, the next regular meeting is May 16th, but we're going to have a special meeting on, I forget what the date is, April 18th at 2 o'clock here, and that may be canceled, but do reserve it on your calendar, please. Okay, are we all done? Thank you so much. Thank you.